HTML input types. This chapter describes the different types for the HTML input element. HTML input types. Here are the different input types you can use in HTML. We have the input element, we have the type attribute, and the type attribute is going to be button. As you can see, we do that. We open angle brackets, we have the input element and the type attribute equal sign double quotes. Inside of the double quotes we're gonna have here button. Then we're gonna have checkbox, color, date, datetime hyphen local. We have email, file, hidden, image, month, number, password. We have radio, range, reset, search, submit, tell, text, time, URL, and week. The default value of the type attribute is text. Input type text. So here we have the input element and the type attribute text. Defines a single line text input field. And here we have this basic example. We have the form element. Inside of the form element we're gonna have label and input elements, and we're gonna click here and try it ourselves. So this is how it should look like. We have the text field, we have the first name, the last name, and here we have a button. So we're gonna grab this example. We're gonna go to Visual Studio Code. We're gonna create a file named index.html. We're gonna paste it here. I'm gonna save it, and you can right click in your HTML file and then open with Live Server. So this is how it should look like. We have the text field, the input type text defines a one-line text input field. We have the first name, the last name, the submit button. Note that the form itself is not visible. Also note that the default width of a text field is 20 characters. So going back to the code, we have the form element in line 8. Inside of that we're gonna have the label element. The for attribute is gonna be fname, short for first name, and again it has to be inside of the double quotes. So we have the for attribute equal sign double quotes. Inside of the double quotes we're gonna have the fname. In line 10 we're gonna have the input element. We're gonna have the type attribute equal sign double quotes, and the type attribute is gonna be text. We have the ID attribute, and the ID attribute it has to be the same. The ID attribute of the input element it has to be the same of the for attribute of the label element. As you can see, is fname inside angle brackets, and the name is gonna be fname. And then we have a line break here. Then we're gonna have another label element and another input element, and finally an input element with a type submit for the button, and the value is gonna be submit. So finally we close the form element, and then we're gonna have two paragraphs at the end. So this is how it works, and we already saw these examples in previous videos, so we're gonna go a little fast here. Now we're gonna move to input type password. The input element, we have the type attribute is gonna be password, defines a password field. Yeah, we have the form element, we have the label attribute, we have the form, we have the label element, we have the for attribute. The for attribute is gonna be username. The context is gonna be here username colon. We're gonna end the label tag here. We're gonna have a line break, and the next line we're gonna have an input element. The type attribute is gonna be text. The ID of the input element has to be the same as the for attribute of the label element, so it's gonna be username inside double quotes. And also we're gonna have the name attribute equal sign, and it's gonna be username inside double quotes, and then we're gonna have a line break. So we're gonna have a label element, a for attribute equal sign double quotes, and in this case we're gonna type in pwd, short for password. We close the angle brackets, and the context is gonna be password colon, and then we're gonna end the label tag, and we're gonna put a line break here. So the input element, we're gonna have a type attribute of password, an ID has to, and the ID is gonna be equal sign double quotes, and it's gonna be PWD, short for password, and the ID of the input element has to be the same as the for attribute of the label element. As you can see, for equal sign inside double quotes PWD for the label element, and for the input element we're gonna have the ID of equal sign double quotes PWD, and the name is gonna be also the PWD. And we can just go to Visual Studio Code, for example. We can just delete all this code that we have here and just press shift exclamation mark, so we can work with a template here. And now in the body we're gonna grab this piece of code and we're just gonna paste it inside of the body. So this is how it should look like. From lines 10 to 15 we have the form element. So now we're gonna open our website. You can go to your file, index.html or whatever file you name it, right click and open with live server, or as you can see, you press the keyboards Alt+L, Alt+O. So this is what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna open it, and this is how it should look like. So here we have the username, and here we have the password. And one curious aspect here is you can put the username can be Joe, for example, and the password, if you start typing something, it's gonna be hidden. For example, just start typing and it's gonna be hidden. So if we go here and try it yourself, this is how it should look like. They added 2 extra paragraphs. The characters and the password field are masked, shown as asterisks or circles. So this is the password field. The input type password defines a password field. So here we have the username, the password. Here they have submitted they have a submit button, but again, in this video we are focusing only on the HTML part. We are not dealing with the server. So if you click on the submit button, it's not gonna go anywhere because we're not dealing with PHP. We're not dealing with a backend, with a server. So that is that. The characters and a password field are masked, shown as asterisks or circles. The input type submit. So here we have the input type submit that defines a button for submitting form data to a form handler. The form handler is typically a server page with a script for processing input data. The form handler is specified in the form's action attribute. So here we have this example. We have the form element, and inside of the form element we're gonna have a label and input elements, and we are gonna click or try yourself to see the final product. So we have here the submit button, and we already saw this example. So we're gonna just grab this example, go to Visual Studio Code and paste it here. We're gonna paste the whole example. Okay, let's open it to see how it looks like. So yeah, we already saw this example. Again, from lines in line 5 we just have an H2. In line 7 we have a paragraph. From lines 9 to 15 we're gonna have the form element. Inside we're gonna have the label element, a for attribute. We already saw that. We have the input element, the type text. We have the ID attribute. We have the name attribute, the value attribute. Okay, so we're gonna have the input element, the type text, and then we're gonna have an input element, and the type is gonna be submit. So in this case we're dealing with the input type submit. So we have the type attribute of submit, and the value is gonna be submit. So this is how it should look like. We should have this button submit, but again we're not dealing with the server here, so it's not gonna work here because first of all we don't have this file here, action underscore page.php, but this is how it should be looking. So that is that. If you omit the submit button's value attribute, the button will get a default text. So we're talking about this one. If we submit the value attribute, let's see, it's gonna save it, let's open it, and this is how it should look like. And again, nothing special since we're not dealing with a server, but we are focusing only on the HTML part here. Okay, so that is that. What else do we have here? We have the input type reset. So we have the input type reset defines a reset button that will reset all form values to their default value. So this is the example. We have the form element and we have label and input elements. So at the end, as you can see here, we're gonna have the input element and the type attribute =, double quotes, and then we're gonna have the word reset. So this is gonna be the input type reset. So just click and try it yourself. Let's see how it should look like. So for example, we have John Doe. John as the first name, Doe as the last name. So we can just have, I don't know, a bunch of words here. And but if we click reset, it's just gonna go to the default values, in this case John Doe. So we click reset, and this is how it should look like. So let's just grab this piece of code. We go to Visual Studio Code and we're gonna paste it here. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna open our website. This is how, okay, 150, this is how it should look like. John, I don't know, whatever, and here you can type whatever name here. It doesn't matter since we're gonna use the reset button. The input type reset defines a reset button that resets all form values to their default values. If you change the input values and then click reset button, the form data will be reset to the default value. So we are resetting it to John Doe. So we click reset, it's gonna be John Doe. And for example, the reset values are John Doe, but we can just, I don't know, in line 11 the value attribute is gonna be set to John, but I'm gonna set it just to J. And in line 13 the value attribute is set to Doe. I'm just gonna reset it to D. So let's go to our website, and this is what we have here. So if I start typing letters or numbers and I click reset, it should get to the default values, the first name J and the last name D, and this is how it should work. So that is that. If you change the input values and then click the reset button, the form data will be reset to the default values. Now we're gonna have the input type radio, and a bunch of these examples we already saw it in previous videos. So we have the input element, the type attribute is gonna be radio, defines a radio button. Radio buttons let a user select only one of a limited number of choices. So let's go for try it yourself and let's see how it should look like. So we have the radio button, the input type, radio defines a radio button, choose your favorite web language. So you can choose between these three options that we have here. We already saw this example. Let's just grab it. Let's go to Visual Studio Code. Let's just paste it here. Let's open it, and this is what we have in our website. So I can just pick HTML or CSS or JavaScript, but I can only pick one since I'm using the radio the radio input type. So if I click submit, it's not gonna work again since we're not dealing with a server. But yeah, this is how it should look like. And then again, this is just the code. Okay, from line 7 we just have a paragraph. In line 9 we also have a paragraph. In line 10 to 18 we have the form element, and we're gonna have inside of that in line 11 we have the input element. The type attribute is gonna be radio, so you type in type =, double quotes radio. We have the ID. In this case we already saw these examples. Again, in line 13 we also have an input element and the type is gonna be radio. And again, in line 15, the input element and the type is gonna be radio. And finally in line 17, we're gonna have the input element and the type is gonna be submit with the value of submit for the button. So we already saw this example, so we're gonna move a little faster here. Now we have the input type checkbox. The input type checkbox defines a checkbox. Checkboxes let a user select 0 or more options of a limited number of choices. So this time we're gonna be able to pick more than one option. So let's pick one, let's pick the other one. We have 3 options, so we can pick the 3 options, or we can just pick 2 or 1, or we don't pick any option at all. So that is how it's working. So I'm gonna just grab this example, move real quick to Visual Studio Code, and this is our example. So this is how it should look like in our website. I can pick the 3 examples, just 2, just 1, whatever, or nothing. And again, you have an H2, you have a paragraph, you have the form element. Inside of that we have the input element, and this type, the type attribute, is gonna be checkbox. So you have type attribute =, double quotes. Inside of the double quotes we have the checkbox, and that is in line 9. And line 11 we're gonna have the input element type checkbox. Line 13 we have the input element type checkbox, and finally in line 15 we have the input element type it's gonna be submit. The value is gonna be submit for the button. So that is that. We already saw this example, that's the reason we're moving faster. We have now the input type button, and again you have the input element, the type attribute is going to be button. We have the onClick event =, double quotes. Inside of the double quotes you're going to have this message that's going to be alert, and now the value is going to be click me. So let's check it out real quick how it's working. So you have the input button, and then it's going to be click me, and as you can see here it appears your alert hello world. So that is that. We can pick this example real quick. We go to Visual Studio Code. So we have the H2 input button, we have the input element, we have the type attribute is going to be button, we have the onClick event, we're going to have the I don't know, YouTube, let's put it like this, it's going to be your alert, do not click me. So we have our value attribute is gonna be do not click me. So let's save it, let's go to our click do not click me. I'm gonna click it anyway, so I have my alert YouTube. So that's that. We already saw these examples. Now we're gonna go for the input type color. So the input type color is used for input fields that should contain a color. Depending on the browser support, a color picker can show up in the input field. So we have the form element, we have the label element, the for attribute =, double quotes. In this case we're using fab color for select your favorite color column, and then we're gonna end the label tag. In the next line we're gonna have the input element, the type attribute is gonna be =, double quotes. We're gonna have color, the ID =, double quotes. It has to match the for attribute, so it's gonna be fab color, and the name also is gonna be fab color, and again you have to put it inside double quotes. So let's check it out how it should look like. Okay, so let's just grab this example, let's go to Visual Studio Code, let's save it, and this is how it should look like. So we can mouse over here this rectangle, click it, and you can pick whatever color you like. You can go here, you can play around with these colors. You have your RGB, you can change it to hexadecimal if you want, so you can play around with this stuff, and that is very cool. So again you have your H2, you have your paragraph, you have your form element, you have your label element, your for attribute, and yeah, you have the important thing here is in line 11. So you have your input element, you have your type attribute, and it's gonna be color. The ID has to match the the four attribute of the label element. Your name also has to match fab color. Then the value, well, there by default is going to be this color here. You can change it if you want, and then you're just gonna have your input element, your type, submit, and the value is gonna be submit for the bottom, and then you're just gonna have a paragraph here. So that this is how it works. So now we're gonna move to input type date. The input type date is used for input fields that should contain a date depending on browser support. A date picker can show up in the input field. So we have the form element, we have the label attribute. We have the label element with a for attribute of birthday. The context is gonna be birthday colon. Then we're gonna end the label tag. In the next line, we're gonna have the input element. The type attribute is gonna be set to date. This is the important thing. The ID is gonna be birthday, so it has to match the for attribute. And the name also has to be birthday. So let's just check this example. Okay, so this is how it should look like. And for example, we can just go to Visual Studio Code. We can just press Shift exclamation mark, and we can just copy this piece of code that they are giving us, or we can just type in it, but I'm just gonna copy it since it's kind of like a lot of information that I want to cover. So we can just open this, our website, and this is how it's gonna look like, birthday. And you can click like right here in this calendar, and you can pick, I don't know, whatever day here. In this case is February 8, 2023. So that is the example. If we go with the example that they're giving us here, the bigger one, let's paste it, save it, and they're just adding date field. The input type date is used for input fields that should contain a date. So the birthday, you have the month, the date, the year. Note, type date is not supported in Internet Explorer 11 or prior, Safari 14.1. So that's pretty much it. You can play around here. What else do we have here? Well, that's pretty much it for the input type date. You can also use the min and max attributes to add restrictions to dates. So let's try it, but first let's check out. So we have the form element, we have the label element, we have the for attribute, it's gonna be date max, nothing special here. We have the input element, the type attribute is gonna be date, the ID is gonna be date max, so it has to match the form attribute. The name also is gonna be date max. Now we're gonna put a max attribute equal sign, and this time we're using 1979-12-31, which means the year is gonna be 1979, the month is gonna be December, and the day is gonna be the 31. So then we're gonna have two line breaks. We're gonna have a label element, a for attribute is gonna be date min. We're gonna have a context that is gonna be enter a day after 2000-01-01 colon. We end the label tag, and then we're gonna have an input element with type attribute date. The ID is gonna be date man, so it has to match the form attribute of the label element. We're gonna have a name of date man, again inside of the double quotes, and the min attribute is gonna be equal sign double quotes, and we're gonna have this number 2000-01-02, and the 01 is gonna be for January, and the 02 is gonna be for the day. So we can check this example real quick. Let's see how they did. Okay, so we can just paste it. Let's go to our website, and this is how it should look like. Use the min and max attributes to add restrictions to dates. So enter a date after 2000, January 1st, and enter a date before 1980, January 1st. So you can pick any number here, you can pick whatever, you can pick maybe, I don't know, this one. So we have, okay, so we have the February 11, 2023, And now we're gonna be able to pick, you cannot pick for example the first, you're gonna pick the second, the third, you can pick the 31. So you have the December 31 1979, since this is a min and a max attribute. So the type date is not supported in Internet Explorer 11 prior Safari 14.1. So that is that. Now we're gonna move to input type determine local. The input type datetime local specifies a date and time input field with no time zone depending on browser support. A date picker can show up in the input field. And again, we have the form element, we have the label element, the for attribute. In this case, we have birthday time. We close the angle brackets, and we're gonna have a context of birthday, open parentheses, date and time, colon. We end the label tag to the next line. We're gonna have the input element with a type attribute of equal sign, double quotes, and this time we're gonna have the datetime hyphen local. The ID, again, it has to match the for attribute of the label element, and the name also has to match it, so it's gonna be birthday time. And then we're just gonna close, or we're gonna end the form element. So we can just grab this piece of code. We'll go to Visual Studio Code and just gonna press shift exclamation mark, and we're gonna go inside of the body, save our piece of code that we just grabbed, and then open our website. And this is how it should look like: birthday, date and time. So you can just go here and we can pick, I don't know, yeah, let's put today maybe. So today is the February 27th 2023, and my time is 1:52 a.m. so that's pretty much it. That's pretty late. So that's pretty much it. Then you can try yourself here, and they're just giving you a bunch of like H2 and paragraph, but this is the important thing. And we are gonna almost have the video. So now we have the input type email. The input type email is used for input fields that should contain an email address. Depending on the browser support, the email address can be automatically validated when submitted. Some smartphones recognize the email type and add .com to the keyboard to match the email input. So again, we have the form element, the label element, the form attribute, equal sign, double quotes. We're gonna have email. We close angle brackets. We're gonna have the context. It's gonna be enter your email, colon. We end the label tag to the next line. We'll have the input element, the type attribute, equal sign, double quotes. We have the email. So this is the important thing, that the type is gonna be the email. The ID has to match the ID of the input element, has to match the for attribute of the label element. And again, the name is gonna be email. So we can just go to our Visual Studio Code and just delete lines 10 to 13. We just copied that from the previous example, so the body is empty. We just grab this example and just gonna paste it, so that like that, and we're gonna save it. We're gonna open it, and here is where you should type in your email. So let's just close this bunch of tabs that we have open here, and you can click and try yourself. And here we're gonna have email field. The input type email field is used for input fields that should contain an email address. Enter your email and then submit. But then again, we're not working with a server, so this is just a general example for the HTML part. Now we have the input type image. So the input type image defines an image as a submit button. The path to the image is specified in the source attribute. Okay, so again, we're just gonna grab, okay, but first we have the form element. We have inside of that, we're gonna have the input element. The type attribute is gonna be image, and again, inside of the double quotes, the source is gonna be image underscore submit.gif. Then we're gonna have the old, it's gonna be submit. The width is gonna be 48 and the height is gonna be 48. And again, these are set by default to pixels, so you don't have to type in px. And let's just grab these examples here. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, and again we're gonna delete the lines 10 to 13, so the body is empty, and we're gonna paste here where we just copied. And if I go to the website, it's not gonna work since I don't have this particular image name, image underscore submit, but I have some image here in my text folder, so I'm just gonna go for this one maybe, and I'm just gonna rename it. So I'm just gonna rename it real quick, so let's cheat it that way. Okay, so now I have the image underscore source submit.gif. I have it. Let's gonna assume that it's gonna be this one, so I'm just gonna, okay, so I have to delete this little part here, the extension. Okay, so now if we go to our website, this is how it should look like, and if I click it, it should send me to my server. But then again, we're not dealing with the server, so it's gonna go like that. So we can open this in Visual Studio Code. Let's just grab this example. Let's go here, let's save it, and this is how it should look like. Okay, so display an image as the submit button. So display an image as the submit button, so we don't have the click me button, but we have this one, and it's sending us to our server, but we don't have a server, so we're not working with a server here. And again, the important thing is the input element type attribute is gonna be image inside of the double quotes. So you're gonna have your source, and the source inside of the source you have your double quotes, and inside of the double quotes you're gonna have the name of your file. You're gonna have your old submit. You're gonna have your width, that is gonna be 48, your height 48, or you can change your width and your height since you can determine how big or how small you want your figure to be. So that is done for that example. Now we're gonna move to input type field. The input type field defines a file, select field, and a browse button for file upload. So we have the form element, we have the label attribute, we have the form element, we have the label element inside of the form element, and we're gonna have the for attribute =, double quotes, and it's gonna be my file. So we close angle brackets, we have the context, that is gonna be select a file. We're gonna end the label tag, and to the next line we're gonna have the input element. We're gonna have a type attribute of file, and ID is gonna be my file, so the ID attribute of the input element has to match the for attribute of the label element, and the name is gonna be, the name attribute is gonna be set to my file. So we can go to Visual Studio Code. Again, we can just press shift exclamation mark, and inside of the body we're gonna paste this piece of code. We're gonna go to here and paste this piece of code. We're gonna save it, and we're gonna open it, and now we have select a file. So choose a file, no file chosen, so let's click it to see what happens, and it's sending us to, well, it's sending us to my folder with my screenshots. So I don't have any here, but you have the idea how it works. So again, the important part here, we have the input element, we have the type attribute, and the type attribute, it has to be file. So that is that. Now we have the input type hidden. The input type hidden defines a hidden input field not visible to a user. A hidden field lets web developers include data that cannot be seen or modified by users when a form is submitted. A hidden field is often stores what database record that needs to be updated when the form is submitted. Note, While the value is not displayed to the user in the page content, it is visible and can be edited using any browser developer's tool or view source functionality. Do not use hidden inputs as a form of security. So this is the example that they give us. So let's just grab this example. But first, we're having the form element, and inside of that we have the label element. The for attribute is going to be fname. The input element is going to be, we have the input element. We're going to have a type attribute, and the type attribute is going to be set to text. We're going to have an input element, and the type attribute this time is going to be set to hidden. This is the part that we're looking, the most important part of this. Now we have another input element. The type attribute is going to be set to submit for the button. So we just grab this piece of code and we're gonna go and paste it inside of the body. So first we have to delete anything inside of the body. The body section has to be empty. Okay, so we paste it, we go to our website, and this is how it should look like. So we don't have anything here, but okay, so the value has to be 3487, so you don't see it, but if you press Ctrl Shift I, and let's make this one a little bigger, and if we go to our forms and if we go to input, here you can see that we have the input element, the type attribute set to hidden, we have the ID, the name attribute, and then we have the value attribute set to 3487. This is how it looks like. If you click and try it yourself, we have the same thing. Note, the hidden field is not shown to the user, but the data is sent when the form is submitted. So that is that. Now we're gonna go for the input type month. We have the input type month allows the user to select a month and year. Depending on browser support, a date picker can show up in the input field. So again, we're just gonna grab this example. So we have a form element, we have the label element inside of that, we have the for attribute is gonna be set to, inside double quotes, be, day, month. The context is gonna be birthday, month and year, colon. Okay, to the next line we're gonna have the input element. The type attribute is gonna be month. The ID is gonna be to be, day, month, and the ID has to match the for attribute of the label element. So we can go to Visual Studio Code and we're gonna go inside of the body. So the body has to be empty. We're gonna paste the piece of code that we just grabbed. We're gonna open our website, and this is how it should look like. So now we have, I don't know, March 23. So we have the month and the year, as you can see here, month and year. So you can pick, I don't know, December 23. This month is going to be February 23, and we can clear it. So that is that, and let's move to the next example. Input type number. So we have the input type number defines a numeric input field. You can also set restrictions on what numbers are accepted. The following example displays a numeric input field where you can enter a value from 1 to 5. So you have the form element. Inside of that we have the label element. The form attribute is going to be quantity. You close angle brackets. The context is going to be quantity between 1 and 5. You close the label element or the label tag. The next line we're going to have the input element. We're going to have the type attribute is going to be set to number. The ID is going to be set to quantity. And again, the ID attribute of the input element has to match the for attribute of the label element. The name is going to be set to quantity, but then we're going to have here the minimum attribute that is going to be set to 1, and the maximum is going to be set to 5. So let's just try it here. Let's start doing it for here, or you can just do it for your Visual Studio Code. But here the quantity is set between 1 and 5, so you have the minimum 1 and your max is going to be 5. So you can just go here. You cannot go higher than that, you cannot go higher than 5, and you cannot go lower than 1. So that is that. But if you change this number maybe to, I don't know, to 10, and you, okay, well, I'm not gonna save it here, just run it, And now I can go to 10, and you can just change. I changed the value of the max attribute. That's the reason that I can go to 10. And here it says quantity between 1 and 5, so you can modify here. So you run it, and now you can see quantity between 1 and 5. And we can also modify here. The minimum attribute is going to be set to 5 this time, so we're gonna do it like this. And now I shouldn't be able to go below 5, so if I click here below, it's not working. And I shouldn't be able to go above 10. So this is how it works, and you can do that in your Visual Studio Code. Now we have the input restrictions. Here's a list of some common input restrictions. In the first column we have the attribute, and the second column we're gonna have the description. So we have the checked. It specifies that an input field should be pre-selected when the page loads. For type, $double quotes, checkbox, or type radio, we have the disabled. It specifies that an input field should be disabled. We have the max attribute. It specifies the maximum value for an input field. We have the max length attribute. It specifies the maximum number of characters for an input field. We have the min. It specifies the minimum value for an input field. We have the pattern. It specifies a regular expression to check the input value against. We have the read-only. It specifies that an input field is read-only, cannot be changed. We have required. It specifies that an input field is required, must be filled out. The size specifies the width and characters of an input field. We have step. It specifies the legal number intervals for an input field. And finally we have the value that specifies the default value for an input field. And okay, so here they give us this example. So we're gonna go to Visual Studio Code. Okay, so we're gonna paste it here, save it. We're gonna save it, and here we just have a form element. We have the label element. The form attribute is going to be quantity. We have the context is going to be quantity colon, and we're going to have an input element. This type is going to be number. The ID is going to be quantity. The name quantity. And we're going to have a min of 0. A min attribute set to 0. The max attribute is going to be set to 100, and the step attribute is going to be set to 10, and the value is going to be set to 30. So let's open it, and this is how it should look like. So as you can see, the value we set it, the value attribute is set to 30. That is the reason that we are starting at 30. Now a step is set, the step attribute is set to 10, so we're going to be moving to from 10. So if I go up, it's going to be 40. If I go down, it's going to be 20. So I'm starting at 30. So if I go up, it's going to be 40, 50, 60, 70, like that. If I go down, it's going to be 20, 10, 0. Okay. And okay, the maximum is going to be 100, so I cannot go beyond 100. Okay. And the minimum is set to 0, so I cannot go below 0. So this is how it works. So now we're gonna go for the input type range. The input type range defines a control for entering a number whose exact value is not important, like slider control. The full range is 0 to 100. However, you can set restrictions on what numbers are accepted with the min, max, and step attributes. So as we saw it below, as we saw it above in the example, here we have the form element, the label element. The form attribute is going to be vol for volume. We're going to have the input element. The type attribute this time is going to be set to range. The ID is going to be vol for volume. The name is going to be volume. The minimum is going to be 0, and the max attribute is going to be set to 50. So let's just grab this example. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, and we're going to erase whatever is in the body, so it's going to be empty, and then we paste the code, the piece of code that we just grabbed. So let's open it, and this is how it should look like. So pretty cool here. So that is that. Now we're gonna go for the input type search. The input type search is used for search fields. A search field behaves like a regular text field. So we have the form element, the label element, the form attribute. In this case we can put gsearch for search Google. Then the next line we have the input element, the type attribute is going to be search, the ID is going to be to gsearch since it has to match the for attribute here, and the name is going to be to set to gsearch. So let's just go to try here. Let's see how it looks like. And this is how it should look like. The search field, the input type search is used for search fields, behaves like a regular text field, and you can search here your browsers if we will have a server or a full stack application. We have the input type tel, and the input type tel is used for input fields that should contain a telephone number. So again, we already saw this example. The most important part is this one, the input element. The type attribute is going to be set to tel, the ID is going to be set to phone, the name is going to be set to phone, and the pattern attribute is going to be set to =, double quotes, and then we're going to put brackets 0 -9, then we're going to put open curly braces 3 close curly braces hyphen, open brackets 0 -9, we close brackets, we open curly braces 2, we close curly braces, we have hyphen, we open brackets 0 -9, close brackets, and then we open curly braces 3, close curly braces inside of the double quotes. So okay, so we're just gonna try it yourself. So this is how it should look like. If I start putting a bunch of numbers that doesn't make any sense, it's not gonna work. Please match the requested form. Why is that? Because it has to be like this: 1 2, okay, let me see, it's gonna be 1 2 3 hyphen 4 5 6 7 8. So if I click submit, it's gonna work. Okay, so we don't have a server, but it's working. So you have the idea. And now we're gonna have the input type time. The input type time allows the user to select a time, no time zone. Depending on browser support, a time picker can show up in the input field. So we have the form element, the label element, we have the input element, the type attribute, we have time. This is the important thing. The ID is going to be up and the name is going to be up. So we're going to try yourself, and this is how it should look like. We can click like right here, and okay, we can set the number, the hour, the minutes, and if it's AM or PM, and this is how it should look like. And we can grab this example real quick and go to Visual Studio Code. Let's just paste it, let's open it, and this is how it should look like in our website. Show a time input control. The input time allows the user to select a time, no time zones. If the browser supports it, a time picker pops up when entering the input field. So you click in this kind of clock icon and you can start playing here with these numbers. So time is not supported in Internet Explorer 11, so that is that. So now we're gonna have the input type URL. The input type URL is used for input fields that should contain a URL address. Depending on browser support, the URL field can be automatically validated when submitted. Some smartphones recognize the URL type and adds .com to the keyboard to match the URL input. So again, the important thing here is the input element. The type is going to be URL, the ID homepage, and the home is going to be homepage. You can just click here and try it yourself, and this is how it should look like. So you can add here your homepage. And now we're gonna move to the input type week. The input type week allows the user to select a week and a year, depending on browser support, and a day picker can show up in the input field. So a year has around 360 days, so you divide it by 7 and you will have the number of weeks in a year. So again, the most important part is this when the input element, the type attribute, is going to be set to week inside of the parentheses. We're going to check out the example and select a week. We can go for, I don't know, we can go for this one, and we're selecting the week 6 of 2023, like this. And we can check out, we can grab this whole example. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, just paste it, save it, and then we're gonna open our website. Display a week input control. The input type week allows the user to select a week and a year. If the browser supports it, a day picker pops up when entering the input field. So select a week. Again, we have week number 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's see if we can go, I don't know, let's go if we can go further. So as you can see, we have up to 51, 52, 53 weeks, 52 weeks for 2023. And we can go like this. We can grab, I don't know, we can play around and pick this one. And we have the week 30 of 2023, and that is that. And yeah, finally we have the input type that specifies the input type to display.